Sounds good. You guys ready? Ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. It is 6 o'clock. We will go ahead. City Council, call to order, City Council business meeting for Thursday, September 15th, 2022. It is 6 p.m. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester.
Here.
Baker. Reba. Cool.
Here.
Mayor Tom Phillips.
I'm here too. Just as a sideline, we are having some internet issues, so we'll see if hopefully only people in here are logged in right now, so hopefully we won't have anybody logged in that has problems. And on YouTube, we may have problems as well with that. So item 2, we do have quorum. Item 2 on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to move any of the consent agenda items to the regular agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reba. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Motion carries. Item 4, we're going to have a dedicated work session. So this is a dedicated work session for mayor, council, staff. And first on the work session, Tiva Dawson is here with Group Creatives regarding the development of the North River Arts and Culture Master Plan.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me here. This is kind of a midway check-in with council. We have, if you remember, Mark Drew with the North River Arts Council came to you probably a little over a year ago. You, Indianola, and Carlisle contributed to collectively to a planning effort to look at a 3 to 5 year roadmap for how each community, as well as the Northern Warren County as a whole, can look to adding experiences and amenities that continue to make our communities beautiful and welcoming and vibrant. And so that's really what the intent is of this arts and culture plan. We're in sort of draft recommendation mode right now, but I'm going to sort of review kind of what we learned about our communities and the direction of the themes for the recommendations. We have Councilmember Livingston as well as Lucinda with the chamber are on the steering committee for it. So the steering committee is made up of 3 to 4 representatives from each of those 3 communities. A little bit about our consultancy. So we are public art consultants that are based out of Des Moines. We work on public art master plans. We're just completing one for Topeka, Kansas, did one recently for Grimes. We're in Marshalltown. So we enjoy helping communities be thoughtful about how they use art to help in other civic goals. So really trying to align arts into a way that helps to advance the existing needs for those communities. We also do installation work. So if you've been to Waterworks Park in downtown Des Moines, this really was a problem-solving tool. They wanted to honor donors and didn't want to do the regular plaque. So those little rings at the bottom are a way that they've put names on that. So we like to problem solve with people and find ways to add beauty in amenities that are iconic. We also do programmatic areas. So a recent one was helping Bravo pilot an artist in residency program. They didn't know how to go about it, how to solicit artists, how to find the right partner. So we also enjoy kind of supporting organizations and thinking about new ways of working with artists. So again, why do the planning? You guys are in the middle of your comprehensive plan. You know how important plans are, to be thoughtful about direction. This one is also trying to kind of think about how are the arts part of these larger efforts. How does your community, yours particularly, is rapidly growing? How does it continue to express itself in its authentic way? Create distinctions so people know this is Norwalk. Really working from your roots so that it doesn't feel like something that could have been anywhere, but somewhere that feels like it's derived from you all. Also just kind of looking for systems of support. What are some policy or financial areas that you can kind of look for opportunities to be able to support those efforts, as well as identifying existing opportunities for cost savings. How do we make sure that these things are not afterthoughts? We wish you would have put the electrical in to support that new lighting project, that sort of thing. So our phase one was just an environmental scan. I talked to staff and citizens, and we did focus groups, all those communities. So we did our best to learn a lot about each of those 3 communities and did the usual needs and opportunities and gaps. Worked through analysis, and we came through with themes after kind of looking through all of the things that came in. And so then we really look at how to align arts into this wider context for the communities, making sure that the end result is a project that feels actionable for all of the communities. A little bit about how we approach public art. Most people think murals and sculptures. They may not think about something like this, which is a model of Sputnik, and it's as if it crashed into a car. We had fun being able to demolish a car that was already, not working. And we just towed this thing around the metro for a week and just put it up in places. So we kind of like to just surprise and delight people. This is a type of art, right? The one on the other side was we had portrait artists on DART buses. And as people rode around, they got their portrait drawn for them. This one is not local, but it's an artist we like to work with. This is essentially a bar graph. Government does surveys all the time. And this one was, where do you want to spend your money, budget money for your community? And so every color represented a different place that people want to see their money spent. And so it's a way of animating data in a new way that really kind of adds fun beauty. They changed it every day for a week based on which question was asked. Sometimes you just want to add beauty. So this is fishnets lighted up in a unique way. And some of that can be temporary as well. Also just honoring local culture and contemporary culture. We love these little plaques that talk about Luke, the ace apple thrower. Like sometimes it's just community lore that you love to celebrate. It doesn't always have to be the things that end up in traditional history books. And a sense of place. We know Chinatown, right? We know what it feels like when you're in Chinatown. We want every community to have that strong sense of place. And planning for the unplanned. You got some, ugly concrete bollards. Let's figure out how to make that something special if you have to live with those for a few years. This is in Omaha, that slide. It's iconic. People every year teach their kids how to wax their little cardboard to get down it even faster. We want those sort of special places to exist in each community. This is sort of lighting up abandoned buildings, and they pulsed as if they were breathing. That community immediately saw an uptick in people wanting to purchase the homes that were abandoned because they had just brought in art as a way to sort of reimagine the spaces. The glass egg hunt was one of our projects that we did with Waterworks Park. We scattered 500 unique, so there's a glass artist and mainframe studio. Each one was special. They were scattered across Waterworks Park. If you know that park in Des Moines, it's huge. And there were thousands of people that descended on that park wanting to find their unique egg. So how to get people to discover new spaces, and it can be temporary activations as well. And then this is kind of a well-known dirt bike park that's in the Northwest. Again, thinking about what are these spaces that are abandoned, we can't figure out how else to utilize them. There's always something new that you can look to activate. We also borrowed some of your pilots. There's a lot of pilots live in hot air balloon pilots that live in northern Warren County, and did a hot air balloon pop-up one winter. It was solicited by the partnership because they were looking to how to get people downtown to spend some money during the pandemic. This was a way that we're able to get people to start to hunt for hot air balloons in downtown. And if you look at the knot on the right is a new roundabout installation that went up in Altoona. So again, you have infrastructure projects. What are the ways of building some unique assets there? Okay. So what we learned about North River as a region. So again, we're tackling this both as a Northern Warren County regional plan, hence the North River name, as well as looking at what can we learn about each community in general. A lot of you may not be surprised that what we learn is that most people don't recognize these three communities as a region. A lot of Norwalk and Carlisle kind of turn towards Des Moines, and then Indianola is kind of down there doing their thing as well. There isn't necessarily a reason that you go to your clinics, each other's clinics or restaurants. So there's kind of a bigger lift to start to look at a shared identity across this region. You have your kind of rural edge. There's agriculture, but there's also more than corn and soybeans agriculture. There's wineries and berry patches and not vineyards, but apiaries. So there's also a lot of opportunity still to lean into that agricultural heritage. And unlike most Iowa communities, you're still growing and strong pride of local businesses. You got great chambers in each of those communities. And one thing I've loved is just the whole geologic time story you guys get to talk about with the glacier ending right before here. And that you've got these rolling hills, you've got the Grant Woods, like you've got vistas that no one else can claim. And that we just think is a key asset. And you also have some parks that are amazing. Both each community has some amazing parks, and you've got some state parks. You've just got some lovely green space assets. So strategies that we have and how to continue to lean into those assets, looking at how the arts, thinking about those themes and really challenging the region to commission some artwork that builds off of those assets. The rolling hills, right? Grant Wood put certain part of Iowa on the map because of the artwork that he did. Placemaking in parks. So you look at this is a salmon, called a salmon bone bridge that was in a linear park, right? This in the northwest area. They're playing off of fish that they're common there and looking at kind of the skeleton of that, trying to make unique spaces and parks and trails. You'll see, and then looking at greenway development as well. Warren County has started to do a North River Greenway plan, continuing again to support that and seeing how the arts can make those places interesting experiences that you want to go find them and experience them, and they become destinations. A lot of people on trails want to bike to the brewery. You want them to start to bike to some iconic little experience that they can find along these niches along the trail or in your parks. End to end just refers to, we think that one area of trails that hasn't been tapped yet is walking trails, long day walking trails. 8 to 15 miles is what people can do. They do it in Europe all the time, and they will get a taxi to bring their luggage to the next place while they just take a nice, long, lovely walk. And we think that there's potential in this region with the distance between your towns as well as the rolling hills and the nature, that there's a new kind of form of tourism that you could lean into there using county roads and existing trails. Actively build with beauty. Again, you are building a lot of infrastructure. So making sure that as you build that, if you're building a park pavilion, how could that look different if you had artists who were looking at that structure and creating kind of some systems that would start to look at that automatically. How artists can also support main streets. So what type, from window displays to live demonstrations, how can the artists start to look at being alongside those small businesses that are trying to attract people and make sure that they know they're there. And creating more opportunities for artists, again, across the region. There's a lot of businesses that have lobbies. There's dentistry, veterinarians, right? They have these lobbies with wall space, often willing to have artwork on them. You have artists in this community, like Mark, who's a photographer who wants to display artwork. Is there a way of starting to catalog the businesses that want to support local artists, as well as catalog the artists that want to display their work and start to have an exchange program across the region? And then also looking at how the North River Arts Council can support everyone's efforts across the region is another layer of recommendations. For Norwalk, what we heard, again, fast growing. You guys have a lot of major development happening, a lot of pride in the school system. You're in the middle of a planning effort for comprehensive planning. I've met with MSA to make sure I have a sense of where your goals are and that these two plans feel integrated. And then as you continue to grow within a growing community, social cohesion and a sense of connectedness continues to be very important. And we think the arts can play a role in all of these efforts. So you have a lot of great community events and a lot of pride in those community events, whether it's the 5K run, your 4th of July parade, or your front porch gatherings that you have. And so we think we've made recommendations for how the arts could be integrated in all of those to enhance those events. One of them is on the side here. This is called it's like the tiniest art and design studio. It's like this little trailer that goes around and pops up at community events. It's modeled, so artists did this. You can just have this. We think it'd be great if the city or some entity kind of looked into a couple mobile units that are easy for those front porch activations. So all of a sudden you can like pop up with all of the supplies you need for a new kind of activity. One that really helps people to connect with each other. There's a organization out of the Twin Cities called Ready Go Art, and that's all they do is hire artists to develop these mobile units that encourage interaction between people. And neighborhoods use them, but also clinics who have a long waiting line and they need something for people to do while they're waiting. So there's a lot of uses for those. Another area of recommendation is your sister city. You can tell me how to pronounce it. Thank you. I saw that you were connected to all of that as well. You visited, right? Is that true? Yes. And it's relatively new as a program for you guys, right? 2019. Yeah, almost celebrating 5 years. So we think there's a lot of opportunities for cultural exchange. You could be sharing artwork, you could be sharing folk dances or different, there's a lot of virtual ways as well as literal ways. You could have artists come over here and visit and do some installation work. You could have just literal art exchange. Pick 10 from here, they'll pick 10. You guys start to exchange artwork as well. So we have recommendations there. And again, capitalizing on upcoming investments. You have this lovely new center that you're building, new sports complex. There's a lot of new civic buildings on the way, as well as new developments. And that is a great opportunity to integrate, to make sure these things feel like Norwalk and have iconic spaces in them that again, feel like I want to go take my prom picture there, or I'm really proud of the community lore that got gathered and is displayed on this wall. So I think to make sure that there's integration with some of those upcoming investments. The fourth one, I guess I forgot to put on there, was also just kind of looking at a couple of key development areas. So your old downtown right here, I still think has got some great bones to it, and looking at how to incentivize more pedestrian level businesses, restaurants, to kind of create a hub there, knowing you still have other development happening, excuse me. Same with the trails, how the trails can kind of begin little hubs of destinations as well, is a kind of fourth area of recommendations. I think that is it. It was a big run through of all of the themes and the direction we're happening for strategies that are opportunities, I think, for you guys. Any feedback, things you're excited about, areas you feel like we should still lean into?
I thought those 4 bullets of your analysis were pretty spot on for when I think of key things about the community. I think you touched on those very well.
Right. Thank you. So we're in review of the actual strategies that are being recommended. And so that plan has tons of hyperlinks, lots of precedent photos. Once that plan gets reviewed in October, the North River Arts Council is planning an unveiling of it to kind of showcase it as a region. That'll be, I don't know if the date set for sure.
The last 2 weekends, it's the last 2 Saturdays of October.
And then we hope to come back to all the councils in November for final adoption.
So the support that you're looking for from council and the mayor, is it just support through adoption of that plan?
For now, yep. That plan the plan mostly right now is just says, I'm here today just to make sure, are we on the right track, right? So are there any key areas that we are not considering that are important to you that we should make sure are in the plan before we start to work towards finalizing the plan? The plan itself is very much, here's all these opportunities. So there's nothing set in stone. There are things like policy adoption that we're recommending. We look for you guys, a big one because you're developing so much would be a percent for the arts to consider. So as development projects come in, you much like you do with parks, you ask developers to start to set aside parkland there could be similar types of negotiation that you could consider for arts and culture. Wouldn't necessarily have to happen with that development. Could go into a larger pool of funds that could be spent in other ways. You could do the same consideration for public projects. There's some communities that once they build something that's over $100,000, they know that they'll always take out a certain percentage to make sure that that is built with some community distinction. So even on the civic project side. So there are recommendations to consider. It doesn't obligate you to that, but we do cite smaller communities that have passed ordinances like that. And there's lots of ways you can go. We can say commercial development, but not housing development, all that kind of, there's all the ways to finagle it. And we offer a lot of links to those examples. To answer your question.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Okay. Next on the agenda, traffic study, Beardsley west of Lakewood. Luke?
Yep. Luke, can you pull up the map I sent you earlier today? Just so we have a visual to talk about. So with the additional development projects getting approved on south of Beardsley and our new subdivision requirements that say we need traffic studies done for larger developments, we had the Beardsley traffic study that was done a few years ago reanalyzed with the new development proposals to see what needed to be done with Beardsley, what the developers needed to do, and get some recommendations. So just wanted to run through what that's telling us, give you some ideas about what we'll have the developers do, and then just some additional things that the city we should be thinking about as we go forward with CIP planning and all that stuff. So really there were three main recommendations out of this study. Again, it was based on the study that we'd done of Beardsley in the past, which already told us we needed to have Beardsley 3-lane at one point. So the first main thing with the study is at each of the pink circles are the main connections of those developments to Beardsley. The first thing that the study recommends is that those roads, when they connect to Beardsley, they be 3-lane as well. So they have 2 lanes going out of the development, one to turn left, one to turn right, and 1 lane coming into the development. So that's something that a design requirement that we'll have of each project when they bring their preliminary plats forward. So that's a pretty easy thing. We don't need to do anything from a city standpoint except require that they do it. The second requirement is that as that development happens and as those connections are made, the speed for Beardsley needs to be reduced from 45 to 35. The additional traffic in that area causes that need due to the kind of rolling nature of Beardsley. So, that's something for us to consider as those connections are made. When do we do that? When that happens, that's a future consideration. And the third recommendation out of the study is for the actual, again, reaffirming the 3-laning of Beardsley. So,
Hey, Art?
Can you turn
Hey,
it off?
Art, can you turn that off?
Turn it off.
So again, previous study, when we studied Beardsley on our own, said, we knew at some point in the future that was going to need to be 3-laned. This study that we had done with the Hackney Hills and Ron Farms projects reaffirmed that we need to have it be 3-laned. So you've got the blue section is Hackney Hills. We would say that would be their responsibility to come in and add that 3rd lane to Beardsley. The orange would be for the Ron Farms property. Again, their responsibility to do that. For this section of Beardsley, then that leaves the red remaining pieces that would need to be 3-laned at some point. The study recommendation kind of gives a couple options. One would be to just have the developers do their portions when they make those connections and when that development occurs. The other thing is we could work with them and try to do a holistic project that does the 3rd lane across the entire section of Beardsley from the bridge to 50th In that scenario, we'd be looking at some kind of development agreements with each developer to get their financial participation and then have one project, so all the work's done at once. So again, not a decision that we need to make today necessarily, but something that we want to think about going forward as we look at the needs of Beardsley. We anticipate getting preliminary plats from these in the next month or so that we'll start reviewing and bring back to you yet this fall. We'll make sure again that they show the intersection improvements. We'll make sure that they're showing what they would do for 3-laning Beardsley, and then we'll have some more discussions about what the city might want to do to participate. So that's really what the study shows us. I'm happy to answer questions.
We had this conversation before around 50th Street. Developers surprisingly against it.
Widening of Beardsley or widening of 50th?
Widening of roads due to their residential development, because they said it was part of the residential growth, and we got the tax income from that, and therefore why shouldn't the city take care of widening?
Yep.
the
Had
streets?
that discussion with
That-
Orchard Hills area.
Yep, and that was prior to our and so that was all part of our subdivision ordinance change, which led us to say, we're gonna do these traffic studies, and then the results of those studies, that's what needs to happen. So what we're reporting here is the results of the traffic study and what needs to happen.
So these developers who have already started development are aware of that, right?
Yes, we've communicated that to them. I mean, they've not started any actual work from that. Again, we've not seen a preliminary plat design. They've been waiting on these results, so they didn't want to spend their design time without knowing what we were going to require. So.
Thanks, Luke.
Yep.
Just one question.
Sure.
Is 50th our road or is it county road?
50th is all ours until
That-
it
that-
gets
that-
south of the S curve.
That Pearson, it's ours.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Because as much as I hate all the stop and go we've developed in our city, that needs to be a 3-way stop. I think in the future, is this whole thing develops. It's a pretty dangerous intersection.
Okay.
Roundabout would be marvelous.
That's some conflict as far as the roundabout goes. All right. Thank you, Luke. Item 5 is welcome guests and public comment. Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate you participating in our meeting. This would be for non-agenda items. We'll give you a 3-minute time limit. If you'd like to address council, we can't take action on those tonight because they're not on the agenda. Also, if you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time. Anybody want to address council? Hearing none, we will move forward. Item 6 is consent agenda. We have expenditures, tax abatements. We have a September 1st, 2022 minutes of the regular city council meeting. Have renewal Class C beer permit and Sunday sales for Get and Go store number 20. We have a resolution approving a grant contract with the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau. A resolution to approve pay estimate number 5 to Sternquist Construction for Sunset Drive, Iowa Highway 28 North Avenue intersection improvements project. We have a resolution to approve pay estimate number 2 to Howery Construction for construction of the Great Western Trail Phase 3 connection project. We have a resolution approving the renewal of an agreement with Midwest Breeding Air LLC, and we have monthly reports. Can I get a motion? Motion by Livingston, seconded by Reva. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Reva, Cool,
Yeah.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7, we have old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item A is resolution to approve the execution of easements and fee title acquisitions for the Beardsley Street and Iowa Highway 28 intersection improvements project. So this resolution is to acquire right-of-way and easements for the reconstruction of intersection Highway 28 in Beardsley. Wayne, what do you have to add?
Thank you, Mayor. The project required 15 acquisitions from 15 properties. Currently have 12 properties signed. And on the agenda for tonight, the appraisals had varying values depending on the land use, if it was residential or commercial or developed and undeveloped. For all the payments we're in, generally the payments are all at the average valuation. There's a few higher, but generally most of them, we hit the average valuation. Something unique on this one, the appraisal said the new trend is for come and go where you have a owner and a tenant. They broke out the appraisal and they put a valuation. We have a payment to the tenant and a separate payment to the owner. The tenant gets the majority of the payment. It's essentially like what we've seen before, like a project impact fee, because they're the ones mostly impacted by the project. So the tenant actually getting the majority of the payment for the easement. The 3 remaining properties, it's 2 property owners. One is Hubble, they're agreeable to the easement, but we're just hashing out the duration of it. They don't want it to be 18 months, which we want that for seeding purposes. The other parcel we're waiting on is NutriSport, which is kind of tied to the access agreement later on the agenda. The payments in the packet tonight are the entirety of negotiations for the properties.
And I apologize, but this is one of the technical difficulties. It's just running slow, so it's churning. I'm waiting for it to load on the screen. But it was included with the packet.
Any questions? Comments? Discussion? Any public comment? Anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
Motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Riva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7B is a resolution approving a public access shared driveway easement agreement. So this is one of them that we were just talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
At a recent meeting, we discussed how the intersection improvements at 28 and Beardsley is going to require Get and Go's entrance to be moved east to where Marketplace Drive is located. So this resolution approves the relocated driveway for Get and Go. I believe the primary hangup is who's going to be responsible for future maintenance of the access drive. Staff remains consistent in recommending that the city only conduct maintenance for several years. After that, it would be handled like any other private shared driveway, with maintenance being shared by adjacent properties. Wayne?
Thank you, Mayor. The Get and Go parcel, they're in agreement with the agreement that council approved last time. Future Sports Smoothie replied with the comment that was included in the packet that they would prefer the city perpetually maintain the access road and be responsible for the cost. What we approved before was the city would be perpetually maintaining it, but the cost would be allocated to the adjoining properties, the city, NutriSport, and Get and Go. NutriSport prefers the city just covers the cost since they're controlling what maintenance occurs on the property. There's a few other minor changes in there, something related to the temporary easement and a few grammatical errors we made changes to. So in the packet tonight is generally the same agreement as before with a few minor changes to it, which would be our recommendation to approve.
All right, discussion, questions, comments from council?
Just so I'm clear about generally what was included before, there was a lot, my memory is at the last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about what should and shouldn't be included. I don't know that I felt like we came to an agreement on that. Maybe we did, and I just don't remember. But I thought, I didn't think we would come to an agreement.
I felt that we had consensus that the city wasn't going to perpetually maintain it. And I think that as a result, as Wayne's been working with, he's continued to take the position with them that, no, we're not gonna do it, perpetually maintain it. I think NutriSport, Smoothie will, after tonight's vote, if the council votes positive on it, will keep the riders' agreement, say this is what we're going to do.
Okay. And again, I just want to make sure I understand. I thought that I heard Wayne say, we are going to perpetually maintain it, but the cost of that was going to be divided amongst all of them.
That's correct.
Right.
For the first 5 years, we will maintain it and cover the cost. After 5 years, we will maintain it, costs are allocated to the properties until such time the Get and Go property sells or redevelops, something happens at Get and Go that triggers it. At that point in time, then it's up for negotiation again.
And this is whatever we ended up calling it, not a private street. Correct?
It's, it, yeah.
Access drive, public access drive.
Okay.
Anything else?
So if we approve this and Nutrisport still says no, you're back here again.
We requested a condemnation hearing with this parcel. In my mind, the condemnation hearing determines value for the strip of land we need. I believe they're separate subjects. I'm hoping the condemnation hearing determines the value their worth or they deserve for that easement we need. I don't think the condemnation hearing is going to contemplate the maintenance of that road as part of it. So I think the condemnation hearing set, if they don't agree to it, we'll move to the condemnation hearing to determine value for the perpetual easement we need. And then when Nutrisport Smoothie moves forward with a plat for development, that's probably then we would negotiate some sort of access maintenance agreement.
Just if it comes to it, maybe suggest that if it gives Nutrisport comfort, you could add language in that when you do this, that says the city would maintain and make improvements the same as any other city street. I mean, it's not gonna be a special, we wouldn't use different parameters for this street than we do for any other street. It's a private access drive, it's not a street.
Public access.
It's public
Correct.
access drive. But there isn't a different level of decision making, I think. So if there's pothole needs to be fixed, if it's got snow on it, it needs to be put.
Their concern, in my mind, their concern should be, we're probably not gonna get there soon enough. We're gonna plow streets, but usually the private developers are out there a couple hours before we are plowing snow. So
So our maintenance of it could include them contracting with somebody to come and plow it, and we could agree with that, right? I mean, that's part of something that could be done. If they don't think we're gonna be there fast enough or whatever, I mean, they can, yeah, they can make certain agreements that we can approve and be a part of.
Sure.
Holly, do you have concerns about how this affects their going forward with the development?
I do, and I know Wayne's done a lot of work to try to accommodate and try to meet in the middle as much as possible, but the developers, I mean, they're great people. I know they wanted to get this development moving last year, and there was, a couple different issues with the roads and the access and timing of our projects, but I do feel like whatever we could do to accommodate or help them a little bit on this piece of it would be beneficial. They are looking at long-term development, larger development around in that area. And I think if it's something that's easy for us to accommodate, then I would like that.
And certainly I want to do what we can to help facilitate their development of the property. I feel like this is just a whole unique situation. We are being forced because of the improvements to this intersection to do certain things that the DOT requires, which I feel like ties our hands in some ways. And I don't think that because of those improvements, we are providing different and really complete, different access for Get and Go, complete access for Nutrisport. And I want to be supportive and cognizant of their needs, but I don't feel like we should have to bear the cost of that when, I mean, I don't know how else they get access if we don't put this in.
I guess one thing that, in my mind, if we go through the condemnation route, what we are doing is we are getting the public access for Get and Go, right? And whether we deem it a public access or what, but this, it's for Get and Go. It's not for NutriSport Smoothie at this point in time, is we're condemning the easement, we're going there. So at the time that they want to come and approach us and say, hey, can we access this road? They don't just have carte blanche to cut into our curb and say, we're here. They're gonna have to come to us with their development, and we're gonna say, okay, you want to start using this road. There's always intentional that whoever uses it, whatever private parties are benefiting from this, are gonna participate. And then, you know, they're gonna have the negotiation at that point in time.
Okay, so really,
Which is really no different than beforehand.
I understand that, but so I guess I don't understand if really this is the discussion right now as it affects people right now, it's only Get and Go.
I feel that that's the approach we're gonna take if we have to go through condemnation and buy an easement for Get and Go to get their access. Because that's what we're doing.
So if NutriSport doesn't sign on to the agreement, then
So I have to
it's our
negotiate.
responsibility to maintain it, and it's split between Get and Go and us.
Mhm.
The maintenance costs after 5 years, and if NutriSport connects in, at that point in time, they would have to probably come up with some sort of maintenance.
Yeah, we'd certainly give them the option to connect in. We wouldn't say, sorry, you can't ever connect on. But, you know, part of that option to connect in is gonna have to arrive at some sort of agreement regarding maintenance.
One thing that, I don't know if this was a specific point that you had, but it's my understanding that NutriSport does not want to sign the easement agreement until we've resolved this future access, maintenance, and sharing.
Correct.
So that's holding up them signing off on something else.
Okay, but
So it's
that's why
linking
we're
the two
going down the
together, even though they're
condemnation route on that.
separate.
yeah, and so that's the part that I guess that I'm getting confused about. This parcel of road either needs to include both of them now, or it doesn't need to include both of them now. I don't, from what I heard from Jim, it doesn't need to include both of them now.
Not if we're being forced to go through condemnation to buy the route. for
It could, we could make an agreement today with,
Absolutely.
with all of them and say, this is what we're gonna do. But we could also say, okay, then we're gonna leave you out of this NutriSport, and we don't know what the future is gonna hold for you. Although certainly, I don't think it should be better than what this is, and I think that NutriSport should know that. I mean, this seems to me to be the most equitable
Well,
resolution for all of the parties.
And I think one thing that they are not recognizing is when they bought the lot, they don't have access to this lot.
Their original plan was the right in, right out on 20.
Yeah, but they don't, that wasn't there. I mean.
And
DOT
that's not
hasn't given
anything
that.
in our control, right? We aren't preventing that from happening. We haven't spoken against it. We haven't encouraged the DOT to deny it. We have no control over that. And that's been the case the whole time. So now, again, because we don't have control over certain things, we're restructuring this entrance and we are giving them the access. I don't know. I guess as I'm just talking about this out loud for two reasons. One, to get my head all the way around it, but also so that from my perspective, the record is clear about we're not trying to not be good partners with NutriSport. I think we're being good partners with NutriSport. And I think that this is a fair agreement for all the parties involved.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think our obligation is to provide access for the existing business. Their business does not exist. Someday it will. It'd be nice to be able to include it with it. Right? But if we can't come to a resolution with them, we build it for the existing business, because that's why we have to do it. Period. Right? Maybe the state will come in and you know, allow some kind of a turn-in form on the other side. I doubt it. They're not big on doing that, but maybe they will. If they do, good for them, right? If they don't, then they can come find us when they want to develop the property. It's okay with me. I'm good either way, right? I don't think that we necessarily should pay the way for the utility for those businesses to enjoy that. They're gonna use that road. Right? They should help pay for the cost of maintaining that road.
The other thing, and I don't know if you know the answer to that. I mean, is this Nutrisport saying, no, really, we'd like you guys to do it? Or is this Nutrisport saying we're not?
Wayne, you've had more recent conversations with them on this. What do you think?
Everything I get is through email. I don't have a good sense.
Because, right, if I'm negotiating on behalf of Nutrisport, I'm doing everything I can to get it to go the way I want. But it doesn't mean I'm not gonna acquiesce in the end to do it, so.
I want to say their last email I received said they wanted to wait till after the council meeting.
One thing I haven't been able to understand myself is that, by relocating Get Go's entrance, I felt they had an obligation to construct that for them.
Right.
But what the city's offering through this to Nutrisport is to build them access and build them a driveway that they didn't otherwise have. And we don't have the obligation to do that. They were getting that as a benefit. And that's the big expense, not the maintenance.
There's nothing there now.
Yeah.
We don't have enough.
Let's go all the way up to right away.
Wayne, is this section of this access drive, is it going to be asphalt or is it being constructed the same way as Beardsley?
Concrete, similar to Beardsley.
So that has a significant lifespan.
Yes, sir. As a point of clarification, just two clarifications, I'd like to make the compensation to Nutrisport for the permanent easement is the value of the land we're acquiring. The appraiser valued that permanent easement. Essentially, we're taking it away from Nutrisport. They can never do anything with it. So they value that as pretty much a acquisition of property, not just the easement. So they're getting their estimated compensation is adequate. It's not like it's for a partial valuation of it. The other clarification is part of this project, anticipated Nutrisport going in, we are including a right in, right out off Highway 28, and the DOT has their agreement with that. So they're gonna have an access connection point possible there as well.
So DOT may do a right-in, right-out form.
There are access plan, access agreement with the DOT included of access point there, right in, right out. We have to construct it, but they're agreeable to it.
Good.
Thank you.
So I would make a motion. If I'm not pretty sure.
And I would second.
All right. Any public comment? Hearing none, I got a motion by Livingston, second by Cool. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Reba.
All right, motion carried. Item 7C is a resolution accepting infrastructure and approving the final plat of Sunset Estates Plat 4. So this resolution approves Plat 4 and accepts the public infrastructure for that plat. It's going to allow the developer to begin selling lots and getting homes built. Back in March, we approved plats 2 and 3, but I was thinking there was something added about the park for Sunset Estates. Is that true?
Correct. So with plats 2 and 3, we accepted and took ownership of the park ground, but they had not, the development hadn't progressed into that area where they were to a point where they wanted to grade and seed it per park standards. So we had a parkland agreement at that time that said we'd accept the park ground at that time, but then they would maintain it. And then prior to plat 4, they would grade and seed and establish the park per our finalization standards. So they have been working on that over the past few months. As you'll note in the staff report, we actually went to P&Z with this on July 11th. And then they've been working on that park finalization. I talked to Robin before the meeting this evening, and I believe they were out there tonight finishing up some hydro seeding. And so, yep. And Luke is drawing the park area that we accepted back in Plat 3. And so now that's being finalized as part of Plat 4. We did accept a park surety back with Plat 3 for, I believe, 167,000. Is that correct, Lindsay?
161.5.
161. So we would still not release that until Robin takes a look at everything and ensures that it's all good. So we still have that park finalization surety. But as far as moving forward with Plat 4 plat, the rest of the infrastructure looks good. And we're ready to move forward with that.
Questions, comments, council discussion?
So the surety would be more than adequate to take care of whatever. we
Yeah.
have to.
Correct.
Public comment? Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Cool, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Item 7D is a resolution accepting a Valley View Parkland agreement. So Valley View is just to the west of Mackinac Sports Complex. This resolution is to accept a parkland agreement for the area so the developer can begin selling lots in Plat 1. This agreement needs to be approved prior to acceptance of Plat 1. Luke and Robin, anything to add?
Just that, so as you mentioned, we approved this before the plat. The next item on the agenda is the plat. So it includes all the lots. It does identify the park outlot as one of the pieces of the plat, but we would not accept dedication of that at this time. So this agreement would then contemplate the dedication and finalization of that park prior to or with Plat 2 rather. And it also contemplates, if you recall, when we approved this Plat 1, there were some trees that they were to plant back in Mackinac area. They've been working with Robin on getting the right types of trees and all of that. But there was also a requirement that they provide a 3-year warranty for those trees. So we've written that into the agreement that they would replace them if they happen to die or they were diseased or there were other issues with the trees. So we've got that worked into the agreement as well.
Any comment?
No more? Yeah, I have been working with the developer. He came back with some trees that we had to kind of change some, and he was very accommodating, so I'm comfortable with what he is gonna put in there.
All right. Discussion, questions?
I've got 2 questions.
Yeah, go for it.
What's the timeline on Plat 2? So this is me asking from the standpoint of, I don't mind delaying it, but I don't want to delay it and then Plat 2 doesn't ever happen, so then the park doesn't ever happen. So
Understood. No, next spring is when they plan on working on infrastructure with that. So
is there a surety bond in place for this park?
not currently, no.
I would tell you that without the surety, I don't know that I want to.
That's the same question about timing.
Okay.
And there's just one word that kind of bugs me in the resolution, and it doesn't say it in the actual dedication agreement, but it says that the developer of Shadow Creek Estates owner will continue development with the intention. I want it to be requirement of dedicating the park. I don't want them to intend to do it and then us be back here in a year or two saying, well, we intended to, but.
Sure.
we don't.
So we can make that change in the resolution. And then I'd also note the Shadow Creek, that was a typo on mine from the previous resolution I'd written. We're talking Valley View developers. So it'll be the Valley View developers will continue development by dedicating. We can find a way to get rid of with the intention.
And then this agreement goes with the land, so if.
Yeah, but basically the agreement and the reason why we don't necessarily talk about surety here is usually we see sureties with when we're accepting the final plat and, all the public improvements aren't completed, but what this does call it out and have the legal description on there and it gets recorded. And that's according to paragraph 3 of the agreement down below. It says in the recording office of Warren County, quarters office shall act as a current lien upon the parkland. So it operates as a lien on the parkland. The city shall have the right but not the obligation to enter parkland and use it as a park ground in the event no one goes to the parkland as required herein. So it does lock in the land itself. I think some of the weaknesses on something like this, and this is what we've done in the past. Is exactly what we've done with past developments. Is there is a little bit of a hole there, because they go out of business, we don't necessarily have it approved.
Yes. And
So that would be it certainly locks it in better than what we did 10 years ago on something.
in the past, the sureties that we have accepted, you mentioned a little bit, Jim. The sureties we were going to accept the ground, but it was in an unimproved state. So we are going to take a surety so that we can make sure that it gets improved. We just talked about Sunset Estates. We own that park ground now, but it wasn't approved the way we wanted it. So we got the surety to make sure that that it is built out the way that the code would require.
So we could do that with this agreement, right?
You could technically, usually we have that surety and those amounts negotiated out ahead of council when we do those. So
I think on Shadow Creek, the original development that you would see like on Plat 1 wasn't, hey, do this to us right now. It was, we had a staging where it was agreed that it would be deeded to us after, I think it was Plat 2. I'm going by memory, so I might have some of the numbers wrong. But then when we went to approve the final Plat 2, they said, wait a second, we can't get it ready yet because we're gonna take some of the dirt off Plat 3 and move it over on the Plat 2. We said, wait a second, you're supposed to give it to us now. And, as opposed to delaying getting the land any further, because they were supposed to do it then the Plat 2. That's when we said, okay, deed us the ground now, and we'll take the surety to make sure we get it in the improved state that we wanted in the end. So I guess that was kind of where I'd see the difference here. But this is a good discussion though, because I want to know, the council's thoughts on this type of a situation.
So they're opening the road to the park already. I mean, I'm just questioning why they're not providing the park to us now. I mean, I don't understand why we have to wait on that park piece.
it's similar to the Sunset Estates one. They've not graded that and established all of the seating and, they've not developed that area of the development yet. So
But they've developed around it and to it.
just the top part of it by lots
They've done a lot of
23
dirt
through
work out there,
26.
and I think I honestly think that it's to the point they should have been providing this to us, that it should be part of the final plat, whether it's with surety to cover the cost of fixing whatever needs to be fixed at this point or not. I don't understand why we're doing a parkland agreement here when there's access to the property already. And they've had ample time, and they've torn up Mackinac Park longer than I was anticipating they'd be tearing up Mackinac Park. They've torn it up for 2 years now, and it's a pain. So I guess I'm just struggling with what the developer is thinking that they don't need to provide it.
Yeah, I would just say.
This isn't on
Yep.
you, this is on.
No,
the developer, so.
I understand. They didn't come back. They were here earlier and left when they saw we had a long work session. So my assumption on why they haven't done it yet is Outlot W on that. We'll have a road paved through it with lots that back up to Outlot Z, which is the park. Outlot V has the road come and curve around that also has lots that will back up to the park. So my assumption is they have done a lot of grading work out there. My assumption is doing those roads, doing the infrastructure with that would potentially impact Outlot Z, the park, if it were to be given to us at this point in time. So they're wanting to give it to us when they have the rest of that done.
Question that is kind of related to the gate thing.
Sure.
I don't see on here, I know we've had it before, where is Plat 2? Because what could happen, and has happened in other developments, is they start with 5. I mean, Holland Point's a good example. They're not building Plat 2.
Yep.
So it could be, 20 years from now when they finally get to plat 2, but in the meantime, they do 4 or 5.
Well, we won't let them come in and say plat 3 we'll make them go sequentially. So that would happen. The next plat will be plat 2, whether it's one lot or the rest of the development. They can't skip a number there.
So if they do outlot W as plat 2, so he's playing a little cycle, sorry. And then they turn around and say, well, we needed the parkland agreement because outlot B, when we do that, we're gonna tear into the park again. I guess it's the same, it's a circle. And I don't know that this is why I'm not comfortable
So,
with it.
and just from a staff perspective, we suggested actually a different way to do it rather than calling a plat, because we know that the concerns come up, so we were trying to put a lot number by the 100th lot or whatever. And their review of our agreement requested us to pull that back and say plat 2. So their intention was to do the rest of plat 2 and give it to us as outlot Z with plat 2. The world does change. I can't say with certainty that the rest of this development will be plat 2. I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but that's what they've told us they're going to do, and that the park would be part of that.
Luke, is it possible to require a bond and that financial impact is enough to drive them to move on the park dedication?
I mean, we could require a bond for it. It's just, we tend to only do that when we are getting something that's not completed, right? If we're letting a final plat go and they've not built the roads yet, we're technically taking the right of way as city property, but they've not built the road on it. So we get a surety to then ensure we've got the financial dollars. With Sunset Estates, we took the park. It wasn't done yet. We got a surety for it. So that would just be different than what we've done anything. I've not seen that from my time here that we've done it. I don't know. I'd look to Jim if that's an acceptable thing for us to do or not.
We actually can, because the bonding requirements that we have is specifically allowed under Iowa code for public infrastructure. That's not completed when they're asking for a final plat to be approved, for public infrastructure that is contained within that plat. And, I guess I'm not willing to answer that question yes or no right now. Looking further to see whether we could call park dedication requirements public infrastructure. I think certainly, if we're worried about plat 2 not coming next, we could probably write it a little bit. We could have more of a staging agreement. I guess I've seen a little bit more detail
Can we just say
there.
the next plat?
Yeah.
plat
77th
2 is
lot.
Yeah.
77th, right.
And I guess the only thing I could see is maybe on
That's what I
outlaw
originally
W,
asked.
X, Y,
Right,
and
that's
Z, maybe we put an or instead of an and if they decide, if they come and say we want plat 2, but we really want it to be outlawed. Outlaw W, and therefore the agreement references plats of entire area. And they make a little bit of an argument, saying, well, I can give it to you now because we don't plotting B, W, X, Y, and Z.
Jim, what about going back to Luke, his suggestion earlier, the concept they threw out that, and I'm just saying lot 77, because that appears to be the very next lot that would be developed. At the time that lot 77 is platted, that's when the dedication has to take place.
I'm comfortable with that, but I also am not comfortable with the lack of it, because if they choose to not do a 77 plot, if they just walk away from the project, what's our assurance of getting the park at this point?
We are recording the.
I know we are,
Well,
but I'm saying
So that's leaving
nothing
on the
else
property.
happens.
So
The-
if they walk away and they don't sell it, and a bank doesn't foreclose on it, and they just decide, okay, we're gonna keep it there perpetually, we don't necessarily have a time limit there, but also, I mean, if,
Can we add a time limit in there that if they haven't started plat 2 by day X, then they will finish the park ground and get it to us?
we can,
I mean, to me, that would satisfy me.
And
And
we-
that's the one piece that
Yep.
is missing,
And
is a
so
definite timeline of.
we've had those traditionally in past agreements. I didn't put that in this agreement because every past agreement we've had, we get to that date and there's some reason we missed a seating window, we missed something, and then we come back and we do an extension. So to that point, staff purposefully left a date out of it, but we can add one back in. I don't think anybody would have a lot of heartache over that.
That would give me comfort. just
So
to have that.
I think we could at this point in time then, what date are they coming to? If they're representing to us that they're gonna do it next spring, if we say by spring of 24,
I think you could do that. What I would do, just from having done a handful of these now and seen them come back, I would, if we think spring of 24, let's move it to spring of 25, just to give another year.
If you're
August
right now, I think
23,
August 20.
next year.
I like
Seriously,
the idea.
I want the park ground in the city's hands. But August 123, to me, that's not unreasonable. at this point.
I feel like my gut would be there we're probably going to be back here modifying that.
I do think that's unreasonable.
Just think about I'm thinking about the amount of time that Robin and Luke spend going back and forth with them on the final grading and planting the grass seed. So just construction alone.
And to that point, again, we took Sunset Estates was at planning and zoning on July 11th. And we're here now, September 15th, saying the park is 99.5% of the way there. I think you still want to go back out and make sure they've done a few things with it. So, it takes time, and somebody comes in and wants to do a final plat in the middle of winter or in the middle of summer, and it's outside of the seating window, and then that's when we end up with sureties and stuff. And so I would just tend to caution to give that agreement more time with, as far as a date goes, because it just gives us more flexibility of not having to come back to you guys and say, hey, we need to extend an agreement.
Well, we don't know how fast the development's gonna.
Right, that's my thought, is that some developments are going really fast and some are not, and, the day that we have just barely escaped a railroad strike and all the supply chain issues, and, I'm just not confident that they're gonna be ready to do the next plat by August of 2023. I just feel like, I feel like that's an unrealistic expectation, and frankly, it doesn't bother me at all if they move slowly at getting this development done.
If we want to put a timeline on there though, I probably wouldn't have a problem with the timeline, like Luke has been discussing, or we're being reasonable to them, right? Because we don't know. That thing could take off, or it could sit there, right? And if they don't get it done in the timeline that we would put on it, they'd have to come back to us anyway, right? Because they'd be under an obligation.
I also don't. Have we had problems with this developer getting the things that we want? I don't feel like this is really an issue. I don't feel like this is, to me, this is not an issue or a concern. They're gonna build it out. It doesn't do them any good to sit on the property and do nothing with it. And when they get to the next phase, then they'll give us the parkland. I don't see this as an issue.
It's the same developer that took down a fence, took down trees, and took 3 feet from the city that we all just accepted. We didn't want to argue with them on that, and that bothers me as well.
Well, I
guess
understand
no,
that
but-
bothers you. I don't agree that we didn't want to argue. We did argue, and they're paying retribution for it. Yeah. Just a different perspective.
I don't mind putting a deadline in it. I'm not comfortable frankly saying you need it to us now. Our park dedication ordinance is based upon, and that area of park ground is based upon the entire development. And so that entire dedication is the entire development, and right now it's only like 25% developed. And I can see us requiring at this point in time 25% of the park, but it is part of the agreement. But in a way, it's good faith on their part that they're going to get it done ahead of time. I don't think they're objecting to it, but I don't mind putting a time limit on it. I think at this point in time they'll come back and saying, no, you need to deed it to us now. It's kind of premature. It cost them a lot of extra money to do it right now, I would imagine.
Well, the purpose behind the park is to service this neighborhood, right?
Yes.
And the neighborhood isn't there.
So are they going to accept the timeline?
I'm not sure they got much choice. I don't think that there'd have much. I've never, in my time doing these, never had anybody get too much of a heartache over a timeline, especially if we're being reasonable. You know, we gave them just a year. I think that they might have some issue with that, but at the same time, they're probably going to say yes to it now so they can get this done and moving. I mean, and then come back a year from now and beg for forgiveness, right? Like, so they're likely going to accept whatever we tell them to. So my recommendation would be, if we put a timeline for it, try to use some of the knowledge we've had of the last ones that came in and go err on the side of a little bit longer. We did that recently with the Windsor Windows Park thing. We talked a lot about what time that would be, and we ended up, let's jump it an extra year and made it 3 years to try to just avoid having to come back, because 2 years goes by too fast.
I guess if we put a date in there, I think that it needs to be a date that either the parkland needs to be dedicated or a surety needs to be provided to the city, rather than them coming back and extending the agreement. I think the expectation is that if we're gonna put a date in there, that's what it is. And I don't want the expectation to be when we come and ask for an extension at once, because my opinion, I'm done with extensions for parkland agreements, because we get developers that just sit, and then we don't get the park ground for 76 homes. We had 76 homes built and no park there. And granted, Mackinac is right there, but there's no park dedicated to that site. So I don't know, I guess that's where I kind of push for the date.
I hear you.
Date or surety by a certain date. So
I could probably, I would think those people probably could too, if we give a reasonable date.
That was
So
September 15th, 2025. So.
sounds pretty reasonable to me. That work? I mean, does that sound reasonable?
No skin off my back, sure.
I know it's a long time, but it's also
Reasonable.
gives them some leeway.
Well, I mean, if the thing takes off and it goes faster than that, they'll probably get done faster.
What do you think, Jack?
It's fine, I think. Probably better out for 5 years, because if these units don't sell that fast, they're not gonna go build second plat anytime soon. So you put 3 years in there, they're just gonna be back.
Okay.
I just,
Want to go to 27?
I don't really care about a date at all. I mean, the date is fine. What I just want to know is that plat 2 is the next one that's developed. I got my answer to that. So. I'm good. So I'm fine with 2, I'm fine with 2.
What if I make a motion for that?
Which one? 3, 2, or 5?
The one I was fine with,
Which is which one?
3.
which is 23, right?
25. Yeah, I think it was what you had mentioned, Mayor,
I'll
the
second the motion.
15th of 25.
And either that or an assurance. Right? On that.
That's what David had suggested. We either have it accepted or they provide a surety related to the partner. We'll smooth out what that means.
I would second a motion with a date. We can address at the time if they come back about whether or not they need to do a surety. But my position, I would second a motion for a date.
All right, okay, I'll withdraw it then and leave it at that.
Leave it at the date.
Yeah.
Okay. You got that, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Nope.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yeah,
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7E is resolution accepting infrastructure and approving the final plat of Valley View Plat 1. So prior item passed, so this accepts public infrastructure and approves plat so houses can start being built in that area. You got anything to add?
Just a few of the details on the plat itself. It does include a mix of single family and duplex R2 uses. The R2 uses are an extension of the kind of R2 uses that are already on Wright Road on the north side. So Wright Road continues on through over to Walnut, and there are 16 lots, so 8 duplex units that will be on the north side there. They kind of back up to that Orchard View Townhomes area. And then from a street perspective, again, Wright Road cutting through the intersection with Walnut. And then Valley View Drive, South Valley View Drive, a new road, and West Walnut Place. That Walnut Road kind of makes a curve around, so it maintains the name, even though they're not connected right now in Plat 1. And I just note, this is one of those areas in town where the street names start changing using directionality. So that's why you've got South Valley View, because everything south of Wright Road starts taking that south prefix. And then you've got West Walnut, because we're in that portion of the world where everything west of a imaginary line in town uses west prefix.
So West Walnut Place will eventually connect to South Walnut Drive. Is that what
Yes.
you said? Okay.
Yep.
And those are public streets
Correct.
and no special setbacks or,
It was in the Valley View PD.
okay,
I think it had 5-foot side setbacks.
but nothing new, right? It's-
Yeah,
It's already
yeah,
been.
no, nothing out of what we'd already approved.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think so B&K letter has the list of things that has to provide all the documents, but your resolution says that you received all of that? Received all of that?
Yes,
Supporting documentation required, but then I assume that it's the same thing that.
Yep.
Tony was.
Yep. I talked with Tony, and I don't think he was on the meeting tonight. The main things remaining with that were, I don't recall the specifics, but when they did their walkthrough, they had a couple punch list items that they were still waiting for them to clear up. So he had gotten with Elliot to basically let him know when those get done, then we'll release the plat for them. So pretty standard thing we do with punch list items. But as far as the letter acceptance and receipt of the following documents, those are the documents that we have and we receive in the office as far as legal documents.
Motion?
Second.
Okay, motion by Livingston, seconded by Riva. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Riva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 7F is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a 28E agreement between Central Iowa law enforcement agencies for traffic enforcement. Chief, I'm gonna let you take this one.
Okay, sure. There's multiple levels of traffic enforcement cooperation amongst metro agencies. One of them is called the sit stiff. That's what this is about. All this agreement does is it gives Norwalk the opportunity, if we so choose, to participate with other agencies in multi-agency traffic enforcement projects on specified streets in the various counties that the agreement incorporates. We have GTSP grant money to pay for that if we choose to do it. It also allows us to petition the sit-stiff agencies to come to Warren County and concentrate on specific roads, while we're also allowed to go to the other counties and participate. Just a formality to give us the opportunity to cooperate with other agencies around the metro.
Questions, discussion, council?
Pretty good program, actually.
Yes.
It helps him to be bigger than he is for traffic enforcement.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion by Rivas, seconded by Livingston. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Riva.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So item 7G is discuss parkland vacations in Sunset Estates. I had a little discussion about that part earlier. Had a builder tell a homeowner that their yard extended back further than it really did. And the homeowners, based on what they heard from the builder, sodded that area and have been using it. The area they sodded is actually in the park at Sunset Estates. So the homeowners are asking us to vacate where they've sodded and sell the ground to them. Jim, I'll let you take it.
Okay, we were contacted by the builder and they, you know, like, I guess as far as the discussions between the builder and the homeowners, you know, we don't know what the representation was. The builder wanted to let us know that they didn't misrepresent it. So I just, that they did not. They felt like they did not. But that's neat, frankly, neither here nor there for the city, I don't think, but maybe it is from the council's consideration, but at this point in time, I don't want to make any representation on behalf of the city that, you know, we believe the builder did anything wrong or whether the homeowners did anything wrong. That's kind of between them. But at this point in time, I think what the facts are is that with that triangle that you see up right there, that is an area that is this city's park grounds, this is a small corner of it. And you can see from the aerial that there definitely grass there has been maintained by the property owners and property owners, I believe, were under the impression it was their ground. And they've been maintaining it as such. So then they approached us and asked the city, you know, whether we would consider basically removing that as part of the park and deeding it to them. And we discussed that in department head meeting. I don't think Park and Rec director or the police chief, I think the Park Rec director didn't necessarily object to doing that. And I think there's some security issues mentioned by Chief Staples where he felt that it'd be difficult to patrol, and with it being right next to the pond, he really wouldn't mind private property being there so that it wouldn't be a little place where people could hide and access a pond that's not the city's. That's the homeowner association's pond, and it's not part of the park. So he didn't have any objections to it either. So I guess what is in front of you right now is just asking you to discuss and ask questions that you may have, and maybe give us some indications on whether the council would be inclined or be receptive to proceeding in this way, or whether it would not be receptive to proceeding this way. Ultimately, what I would expect is if they were, the council was, then at that point in time, we would have to figure out a fair market value. We can't just, legally, we can't just give it to the property owner. So we have to figure out some sort of fair market value for it. And then there'd be a process for a public hearing for disposing of real estate, things like that. So, but I think for tonight, what we're looking more for is just some input from the council on whether we should be proceeding with this request or whether you'd be willing to consider that or not. I think we do have a property owner here today too. So certainly he's let me know before the meeting if you have questions or you want anything from him, he'd be happy to participate in the meeting.
Jim, with the triangle that's left, I assume that we would sell that. Is that connected to a larger park? Or would it be out there all by
So
itself?
if we could blow it out, it might also be easier to look at that exhibit from, yeah. You see, so basically those lines, that's the triangle, but the rest of it, as you see the outline going right now, that is the park. So that was the park we were talking about earlier this evening. Where we accepted the plat, and there's just a couple of things before it's finally finished. So the rest of that, we're talking just that lower corner of the park. Basically right there.
So I'm gonna start. I apologize to the homeowner because I'm not going to have to say, but we've had several opportunities where we've heard homeowners that said, the realtor promised me this, the builder promised me this. And I'm tired of, we're not the builder, we're not the realtor, we're not any of that. And to me, this was park ground. And if the builder promised it to them, then I think the developer probably should, or builder should be finding that much ground to give us somewhere else at this point, rather than us just giving up. I'm not sure how much is that, Luke, or Jim, you guys know. I know it's not very much, but at the same time.
I will figure that out really quick here.
The request was 15.15 acres.
Is that for both parcels? Again, it's park ground that we're losing because I understand everybody's concerns with it, but at the same time, it's not the city's fault that builder, developer, whoever it was, promised that that was yours and it wasn't. And that's the part that, I mean, for me, I'm struggling getting over that. So I feel for you, I do. But at the same time, there's no legal precedent to me as builder walking in and saying, hey, that's your ground all the way up to the pond. There's no legal precedent there. So I guess I'm struggling with that side of it.
I don't know really what the value is of us to keep it. The homeowners aren't saying fix this because we were wronged. They're saying, hey, are you willing to let us buy this land from you? I have no problem with that at all.
That can go either way, and that's where I'm at. Is I just have, mine is more of, this isn't the first time we've had someone complaining about something and then we stop complaining. I know that we've had people, you know, that's not what was gonna be. I was gonna have a cornfield behind me for the next 50 years. No, you weren't. I mean, that, we've heard that a lot of times. I was gonna have the horse farm across from me for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
We've heard it from here, person after person after person. And I guess I'm trying to say we need to get over that hurdle as people and say, you know what? Oh, well. And I, again, I don't mind. I guess mine is more, if we lose 0.15 acres here, where is the builder or developer gonna give us another 0.15 acres? Is there something adjacent to this that they can give us that's part of there? I guess I'm looking at it from that standpoint. If it's really truly a builder problem, you know, the builder should be the one making it right.
I guess I'm looking at it from the attitude that I'm thinking, okay, functionally, right? So if we would sell this to them as they requested, functionally, what do we do with the rest of that triangle? Can it still be used? Is it useful because it's adjacent to the rest of the property? Or does the lay of the land make it where it wouldn't be useful to us anymore?
I don't think there's a rest of the triangle. That is the entire triangle would be gone.
So they would buy the whole triangle.
That entire triangle would have to be purchased.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it would probably be the because there's two homeowners that it backs up to, so, yeah, it won't create an island of a triangle.
I misunderstood because I thought it was just the area that was married.
Okay, no, it would be the whole triangle.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I'm sympathetic. But I also am frustrated that once again, we have owner, developer or a realtor and not, I mean, I don't, with all due respect, I don't know how you can buy a 1/4 acre lot and look at this and know that it's not more than a 1/4 acre. And I think that parkland must have had some value to it because we are no longer in the business of accepting parkland that is not parkland. We don't accept scrub. And as far as security for being around a pond that would not be part of the city's ownership, so as a homeowners association pond, that's fine, but there's all the rest of the shore that also will have those same security concerns. So I don't really buy that. And I know it's not that much land, but it's more setting a precedent that I'm concerned with here. It's sort of like giving credence to squatters' rights in a way. I mean, I know that they're willing to pay the city for the value of the land, but we're gonna have problems valuing it. And if we evaluate our process for valuing it is done in appraisal, who's gonna pay for that? Who's gonna pay for legal costs for doing this? It's time. It just, I'm sorry, but there's a cost. You know, there's irrigation in there. It should be removed. I don't know if anything else has been planted on there other than sod. But I think it's between the owner and the builder, owner, whoever told the owner that it was their land to work out who's gonna pay for it. But I think that.
We really don't know that. We don't know.
I know, but that's not our problem.
Yes, yeah, but
That
I
is
want to make
city.
sure that we, you know, that's a city sensitive in making statements. You know, that we don't know
I
we
don't
don't know
know who's
the transaction. We haven't reviewed the transaction. We don't know who's responsible.
And I don't know who's responsible. I'm just saying, I don't think that it's the city's responsibility
Yes.
to then make something right.
Well, I I don't know the point of any more discussion. It's
Right.
it's at best 2-2, so it fails if we go to a vote unless somebody moves to table it, and I don't know that,
It's not a vote.
just a
It's a thumbs
discussion.
up. Thumbs up, thumbs down, yes.
Well, I give a thumbs up. I see, I don't see it as setting any precedent. We get requests of all sorts of all kinds all the time. Some we agree to, some we don't. I don't see this as setting precedent. They're not asking us to give it to them. They're willing to pay for it. I have no issue with it at all.
I think, Jim, we talked that cost of appraisal, cost, all those costs would be pulled into the cost of the loan. Is that correct? Yes.
Well, looks like we're sitting on 2-2, so take that with you as you go down the street.
Call Baker and see what he thinks.
Yeah, I think we're.
Public comment.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
My name's Bryce Floyd. I'm representing our family. My wife's at home with our kiddos. I have letters of copies of the letter that I sent the city attorney. If you hadn't received those, that really has the full background. Interest of time, I won't go into it. So thanks to the city for preparing the proposal and for listening to this. I do want to correct, though, statements that Mayor Phillips and the city attorney made on the story that I think are important to line up straight. When we were seeking or looking at the property, we had not sodded and irrigated it. The builder had done that. There was no markings for the park.
The builder installed the irrigation system.
Correct. Builder installed irrigation. The builder sodded the yard to those lines. The builder also, as part of the covenants of that development, was required to put a tree in the front yard and the backyard. That tree, if you pull that map up, whoever is controlling that map, that tree was actually not within the sodded area. So we requested that tree. If you zoom in, you could probably see where it was planted. It was planted in that triangle with the rougher grass in it there. We actually requested that tree moved. Where did the builder move it? They moved it to the sodded area. So for us, we are seeing a yard that we see sodded area. We see irrigation installed. We see a tree that's been moved to that line. We have the sellers of that property saying and giving us tips on how to adjust irrigation to fit that line. And we have our own representative, our own realtor informing us that that's our line. Could we have done a survey and been responsible for this? Absolutely. But if you were in our shoes and you had 4 or 5 pieces of evidence that that's your line, should have done a survey and have 7 days to do it. And then can you even get a survey in 7 days? So our request was actually not the full triangle that was drawn. It was just that sodded area. That other part of the triangle, I think, was included by the city to just make a nice square off. But our original request was just 0.1 acres on our northmost home and our neighbor asking for 0.05 acre. We have children. The size of this yard influenced our purchase. The size of the yard that is actually surveyed and real, which we were misinformed of, would not have had us purchase this property. So it's not a, gosh, wish we had a nice yard. It's a plea. It's a plea to the city council. There was an error. Agree on precedent. That's a concern. The rest of the properties in this development, the park line is clear. The developer, the builder, can't sod beyond the line because it's actually fully grown, as Mr. Paris said. It's all grass, it's marked out, it's clear. But in our case, it didn't exist. So it was a very unique situation. Thanks for hearing our opinion. Thank you.
Did the information that you sent to the attorney, at any point in time, was there an offer, a purchase offer, or any kind of a dollar figure offer for purchase?
We did not do that. It's yours to sell. But we did offer there that we would cover all attorney's fees, survey fees, I think, measured, raised by Councilmember Riva, that we would pay for all that as part of the purchase. We would want to put no cost on the city to do this, just some staff time to orchestrate.
Is what I should go either way on. I'm back and forth on it. The precedence is the piece that concerns me here. And again, it's because we've had this multiple times. Telling me the realtor told you something means absolutely nothing. I've brought a lot of realtor friends and I probably wouldn't trust them if we're property lines already.
I can have a little bit of sympathy for him though, when he says that the developer the one who installed that irrigation system.
The builder, I'm sorry.
The builder. That's what here sounds like.
Yes. But I would suggest, I don't know if this is the first home built, but every home comes with an abstract. And the abstract clearly marks the plots, and the assessor site clearly marks where the land is. And so I would just check.
We've learned many lessons here.
So I would tell you to proceed at this point, because I think that I'm most of the way there at this point.
Okay.
All right. And you guys are willing to pay a reasonable price. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not like we're. I understand, but again, it's the precedent side of it. So.
Absolutely, very important.
He's taken 3-1 down the road with him. As he thinks it's through.
Maybe 3.5.
All right, that's probably
I
enough.
think I've got my direction.
Enough for you to do some thinking.
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So are we looking at the entire triangle that Luke was drawing, or are we just looking at his small piece that he's asking for?
I would either do the whole triangle or none of it.
That's not quite the right.
It adds a little more to what you're asking. No, but what I'm saying is, I think from our standpoint as a city, we either need to do the whole triangle or none of it. So I think that's just kind of where I'm at with. It adds a little bit more, not the second line.
So not the
So we have-
further north line, just the south line.
Just the two properties that we're talking about.
Okay.
Because you can't end up with a little piece that you can't access.
It's one here. South, I think you drew north and one is south.
You're talking just,
There you go.
Yeah,
That
it's
one,
like
and then
that.
if you go
Then
south,
back.
south end of his property line, go up. Yeah. There you go. Okay. So that gets split into two. Because your neighbor would buy the little piece.
That's right. Yep.
I was confused at what home he lived in, so thank you. Yeah.
thank you.
And sorry, and again, that's the precedence of it also.
Thanks.
Got to trust realtors.
And thanks for coming forward. Thank you, clarifying everything.
Thanks for being.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on this one? All right. Going forward. Item 8, council inquiries and staff updates. Holly, we'll let you go first. Brian's been here waiting a
Yeah.
long time.
I told him earlier it would be a long time. He's like, I watch every single council meeting. So I give him lots of credit that he is very involved in what we do here. But you all know Ryan, he's been with Houston Construction. So he's been our long patient hotel developer as we started out on the North Shore. And thankfully they stayed in Norwalk and we're still working on this hotel project. So what we just want to just run by you guys tonight is a couple of scenarios of where we're at, what we're looking at in terms of the hotel project, the potential incentives, and just get somewhat of a little bit of a feedback. I know you can't make decisions on this right now, but just a temperature and how you feel about what you want us to do as staff in terms of flexibility and how we can stretch how far for a hotel. So we've got kind of where we're at on, I guess, comfort level. Jean, our finance director, her knowing the city finance side of things, and then what hotel developers need, and it's the flag. So I know Ryan's representing the he'd be developing the land and purchasing the land and working with the hotel, but the flag is who has been sending us their financial performas and everything that's come to these numbers. But just to refresh the scope of the project, again, it's 4 stories, 82 rooms, 43,000 square feet, pool. Ryan just mentioned that they would be doing custom Norwalk artwork in their lobby. They would be purchasing 3.5 acres, and we can talk a little bit more about their site they're narrowed down to, if Ryan wants to. But that would include an outlot for another retail facility, just like what they were trying to do up at North Shore. So they could build an additional retail center that would give us an additional 1.5 to 2 million in additional value outside of the hotel. The cost of the project just for the hotel piece of it is 15.5 million. I'm not sure what the cost of their outlet development would be yet, but we'll know that later. We're conservatively estimating the assessed value of the hotel to be about 6.5 to 7 million. So obviously there's a gap there in terms of what we can get them back in TIF for what they need. So total, since they're spending 15.5 million, their total need for a gap is about 6 million. So we've gone down the road of the TIF and how to do that, how many years. And so we've come down to, if we could figure out a way to get them to 3 million in TIF rebates, we can stretch it to the 20 years, but that's something we want to ask of you, just how you feel about how many years you'd be willing to kind of stretch the TIF rebates. But if we could do 3 million with that, 1.5 million in hotel motel tax rebate, and that would be giving them 70% of that because we have 30% committed to Bravo. And these are both looking at like 12 to 15 years right now of what we're projecting. And then they asked for 1.5 million in city loan because our interest would be lower than the standard lending. They did ask for a forgivable component in that. I know Jean's not really comfortable, and she can talk more on that. She's not very comfortable with the loan component, especially the forgivable piece. But there would be benchmarks if we did go down that road, that it would be forgivable. And we go 2 routes on the forgivable side of it. It could either be forgivable if something, God forbid, happens and they're not able to meet their needs over the first couple of years, or it could be more of an incentive where if they go way above and beyond, kind of like what we did with Michael Foods, if the value comes in much higher than anticipated, then we would forgive some of that loan. So that could go a couple of different ways. What we're looking at, what we're able to pencil out right now based on that 6.5 million is we're about 2 million short if we don't do a loan component, unless we stretch, because we're at about 12 to 15 years on the TIF rebate and the hotel motel tax rebate. But if we stretch out further to closer to the 20 years on both of those, we could get them closer to that 6 million, I think, with or without the loan. Maybe we'd still be a little bit short without the loan. But so that's really just what we kind of want to gauge your temperature on, is what's our thought on the hotel projects. I haven't talked to the hotel development yet that isn't expecting something similar to this. We've got 3 or 4 kind of floating around. These guys have been the most patient, worked the hardest so far. But we don't want to continue forward, trying to negotiate something that you all aren't comfortable with, or stringing them out either. So we just need some feedback, I guess. I know Lucas tried to stick within that kind of 10-year, let's try to get all of our incentive packages in the 10 to 12 years if we can. We know we have the ability to go to 20 if it's something we really need for the community. So that's where we're at right now. Just what your thoughts are on this, on that flex space.
How many dollars in total are you talking in incentives? Because you threw out a lot of numbers.
I know, I'm sorry.
I couldn't have told you if you were at 3 million, 6 million, or 10 million.
They need 6. We can get there if we can stretch, because we're looking at 12 to 15 years in rebates, but that is about $1.5 million short for them. If we can stretch up to that 20 years, if we have that flex, plus their value will be going up over time, we could get them closer to that 6.
So we're giving $6 million in rebates on a property that's going to have a $6 million minimum assessed value.
We are going very conservative on the 6.5 value. I think over time that's going to be closer to 9, 9.5. That's what their appraised value is looking at. I don't know, Ryan, do you have any other value comparables?
Yes.
Come on up here.
It's been sitting there a long time.
That's all right.
Hi, I'm Ryan Huesman, Huesman Construction. So the thing about hotels is it's a lot of square footage, a lot of floors, etc. But hotels just don't quite get the tax value or assessed value from what we have seen from other cities around the entire Midwest or even country. I know Norwalk has some pretty high taxes. But the more the value of a hotel is more, the additional services and keeping people in a community and stuff that it brings. So I would hope from a developer standpoint that our taxes could maybe break even, honestly, on basically what we're asking for in incentives. The other thing I know you guys are looking at is 6 million. But just like when we were on the North Shore, part of that 6 million is just to get our loan down and our payments. So on day one of occupancy, we're gonna give the development agreement and assign it to a bank, a local bank. And so we're looking at the present value of that 6 million. And so again, we're just trying to reduce our costs to be profitable, I guess. So any questions? Did I answer it?
Their outlot value too, we've not factored into this. If they are able to purchase the lot they're looking at, the 3.5 acres, and the outlot gets built out with additional retail, we would automatically add that into their total value. So maybe that would get us to the 8.5 to 9 million of value that would pay them back faster on that rebate. But
dollars in the incentives when we're looking at the hotel on the north when we were first talking about this? Just curious.
Five.
Mhm. And that included some infrastructure costs, correct? And so the new location doesn't have infrastructure costs that we're gonna have to be repaying. This is me asking.
Yeah,
I don't know where it's going.
Yeah, so that's a fair question. So when we were on the North Shore, we were looking at additional traffic counts, the expansion of the airport, et cetera, as additional revenue drivers. Hotels have always been pre-pandemic, whatever, very seasonal. So our slowest time period is winter. And so in the winter months, all hotels really rely on traffic. And when we had our flag come out and visit Norwalk last November, they really like seeing that at that location, because they said about 30% of the rooms that get filled on a nightly basis are just people stopping by from Highway 5, our airport, to fill those rooms. And so we upped that amount to make up for that loss in revenue being further down in Norwalk. Also, hotels tend to look at additional services. And I know Norwalk Central is really expanding fast, but we still don't know what that future holds. And so we don't know what services will be there, gas stations, food, et cetera. And so that's to help, again, cushion us.
the land price, I don't know what the difference was up there versus here.
That's other, yeah. So we were doing kind of more sweat equity up there on the North Shore to try to help the value and stuff. As for like the outlot, being completely honest, our partners and co-developers on this, they do hotels. And so they're doing 3 across Iowa this year alone. So the outlot is strictly Huesman Construction, not Norwalk Hotel Associates. So that is my dad and I having faith in Norwalk and additional services that we can offer the hotel for those that help the hotel, so. But yes, the 15 million does include the extra land costs. We are paying more. We're not, we are getting those services, but we're also paying for it. So.
So I guess just needing maybe a little.
Yeah, so that's our guidance. Yeah, guidance.
Yes,
So
guidance.
we, like I said, there's hotel motel tax, tax rebate, et cetera, as part of the package, like almost 3 different scenarios part of this to make it up. And that's what we're looking for guidance on. Which one's more important? Ours is more just the whole dollar amount, honestly. Because again, like I said, we're signing into the bank on day one. And
We're not
so-
doing a grant component. I don't, we've been trying to get away from that, doing the upfront funding. We were doing that at North Shore. I think we were to do 760,000 at that first stretch of road that would have been completed to the hotel parcel. We're not doing an upfront grant component on this, so it would just all be rebate and, or if we did any loan, but I know that's.
And we're okay with whatever sureties or terms you guys would like. I mean, all major hotel flags have a 20-year term. And so we sign a contract of 20 years. And it's our responsibility to uphold the brand, et cetera. So
What about, sorry, Stephanie, you were going to say something? One of the things that we had talked about, realizing that one of your concerns was less occupancy being further off Highway 5. When you pay hotel motel tax, that defines your occupancy. So utilizing hotel motel tax could say how successful it is.
yeah, so yeah, it's we set a dollar amount when we were on the first development draft on the North Shore, as I was saying.
Right.
Yes, and so we're okay with the dollar amount. Sometimes other cities, from what I've been told, go by years. It's just, yeah.
So one thing that that I was wondering is, talking to Holly about an idea, is realizing that if in fact moving away from the highway, you have less occupancy, you're looking for the city to help make up that difference, provide some security. If the hotel motel tax comes in high enough, which means you're achieving the occupancy, then could we then just lower the rebate or lower the incentive based on that?
Well, yes. Again, if I understand you correctly. So like I said, so if we, we're projecting to do, let's say 65% occupancy, that's the national average right now, I believe 64, 65. And we do 70% or 80%. Data center goes up right next door or something, and we're really full. Yes, we could make more revenue and get it paid down a lot faster. But again, we don't know. And again, like as a developer, we're sending it to a bank on day one. So it's the bank that would benefit. And so that's why we're okay with putting a dollar amount in there, because if you get that in year 8 instead of year 15, then the bank ends, I'm assuming. So yeah.
So I'm not a fan of the forgivable loan or the loan piece of it all, but I'm okay with extending it. Would you say the 18, 19 year? I mean, if you think that can pay itself back without the loan piece, I guess the loan piece is the part that I'm not as comfortable with.
Yeah, and that's what Gene said too. I mean,
And then it's just more comfort. And if there's ways of doing it, it'd be okay, but I'm just not. We're not a lender, we're a city, so.
What's everybody else think?
Whatever it takes.
How long were we looking at running down? Who was on the North Shore? What was the lifetime there?
18, 20 years, something like that.
yes, it was 18.
Yeah, it depends on which one.
18 unless their value came in higher, then it would shorten it.
That's where I think I'm okay with that number, just because we were there before.
We were good with it before, we ought to be good with it now. I mean, that's right. Mathematically. we were good with
Because it would be either or, yeah, whichever came first. If they hit higher value sooner, then we're done at 15 years. If it's worst case scenario of 6.5 million value, then it would stretch to that.
I would agree with extending it and don't be looking at, any other kind of special grants or anything else.
So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. So on a $15 million construction cost, a minimum valuation of $6 million. And I'm hearing that there's comfort providing an incentive of $6 million, even if it has to go up to 20 years.
I still don't think that minimum assessment number is right at 6, but again, yeah.
Yeah, so we did a feasibility study a long time ago too, actually, over the last 2.5 years. And the most recent one had a number of comps. And obviously it's all public knowledge, but it went even farther depth into in the feasibility study, like again, what taxes are for all the different cities. And yeah, it's just, again, like a lot of times they really only come back at like 3.5, 4. And so us pushing it to 6, 6.5 is already kind of risky in our eyes, you know, but again, if you said, I said before that it's a pretty high taxes, and based on that feasibility study, there was a tax component in it estimated. So that's what we're going on.
I don't know what everybody else thinks, but if you roll the outlot into the hotel, as far as to pay the hotel incentives, then there's no incentives for the outlot.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we're as developers of the outlot, like, so we're taking on added risk, but we're also getting that benefit from the hotel side of things. So
Okay.
that's, since it's all the same people. So again, so like additional service, obviously a restaurant. So the more services that are around, it benefits, it gets people to want to pick our hotel over a different hotel, et cetera. So that's what we want to offer to help get people.
And Ryan, the timing of so you have a letter of intent that you're working out with a landowner right
Yes.
now, and you guys are looking at like a November or with January closing date on the land, if things can kind of work out on the city end of it. Is that right?
Yeah, so timeline wise, yep. Get land locked down, then turn our application to the flag, constant communication with them. But we still have to go through that formal process. That takes 60, 90 days, close on the land in January. Start as soon as possible in the spring, as long as infrastructure and everything is permittable. It's a year-long process. So we're looking at spring/summer of 2024, and we'll try to obviously align that with Sportsplex and opening at roughly the same time. So
What's pretty simple.
What?
The hotel has a pool.
Oh yeah. So
Double checking because there's a lot of people saying that that's a necessity.
yeah, so it's pretty much our indoor pool. It's
No steakhouse though,
Next door.
huh?
Wow. So steaks have gone up in
I
price
got
a
enough
lot.
of the
Labor costs. It's a lot of steakhouses in Des Moines are coming. So
You know, it's really a pretty simple mathematical thing though, if you think of it. Because, we set out a certain number of years, 18, 20, whatever it is. And he guarantees a minimum assessment that makes it work. Right?
Yes.
So it's on you.
Yeah, they only get their money if their value is there. I mean, that's always kind of been the deal.
yeah, so
All right.
well, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Anything else?
No, just want to know on that year stretch, if you guys are comfortable with us doing what we need to within that. From Stephanie.
Yeah, you gotta work on getting a steakhouse.
So can I
No.
clarify, we're just looking at going up to that 20-year tip increment rebate and then hotel motel tax making up the difference?
Yeah.
No loan component?
No.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
All right. Thank you. Robert, you have parkland ratio update of some
Yeah.
sort.
Luke, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay, so with all the new parkland coming on board, I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update of where we are with our parkland to resident ratio. So in 2018, we completed a comprehensive park and open space plan. At that time, the Park and Recreation Department managed and maintained 8.5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. The open space plan recommended that the city of Norwalk should actually have 15.5 acres per 1,000 residents at that time. So in 2019, parkland dedication requirements were increased to 8.5 acres per 1,000. So that is what we require from the developers. And to make up that difference to the 15.5 acres, that was then going to be on the city to make up that difference over time. And that was by the year 2030 is what our comprehensive plan was recommending. I believe that 8.5 acres per 1,000 was, that was the amount put in the subdivision regulations just to maintain, so that we could at least maintain what we currently had. And then that burden would not be 100% on the developer. Currently, that is a 55% is what we ask of the developer, and then 45% of that final 15.5 acres, came to the city. And then any amenities that we put in the park is 100% on the city, on top of trying to get to that 15.5 acres. The line graph here kind of shows the blue line is kind of where we were and where we're headed. They are actual numbers through the year 2022. And then from 23 to 30, those are projected numbers at the 8.5 acres per 1,000 residents. The red line is where we need to be per our comprehensive plan at 15.5 acres per 1,000 residents by 2030. So this line graph shows that with that purchase of Serenity Woods, we are actually where we are supposed to be. And if we keep our parkland dedication amount at 8.5 per 1,000 residents in 2030, we will be where we should be. So thank you very much for your support and your commitment to Parks and Recreation and to the citizens for maintaining and giving them park space. I think moving forward as your Park and Recreation Director, I do think that we should look to increase that amount to 20 to 25 acres per 1,000 residents. Not only does, today we're at 20.
We're at 20.5, so you're saying maintaining that as a minimum going forward?
I believe so. I think that parkland helps drive development, and in addition to the neighborhood parks, we are growing our community, which means our outdoor programs are growing. We have our indoor space coming, but special use, larger park spaces are needed for things like, soccer, baseball, softball, the normal that we already have, but also special use is for pump tracks, community gardens, lacrosse, rugby, just
Mountain
other
biking.
things that are coming. What?
Maybe mountain biking.
Yes, yeah. So just things to think about moving forward that need that special use, larger park commitment than just the neighborhood parks. So any questions?
I've got one that's not related to this, but you talked about Serenity Woods. Do we know when that will be available for?
So
Just
we,
approximately, you don't have to get exact, because I know that's not available.
I don't. We need access, we need public access first, and might be something we talk about later. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Anything else, Robin?
Nope, that's
All
it.
right.
Oh, well, I could, you want me to update on parks now? Okay. So, Elizabeth Holland Park, as you're driving down 28, if you kind of look, they're just north of Holland Farms. You'll kind of notice that we're removing invasive species, and we've been clearing all that prairie out. That's kind of been a week and a half long project. And so Dakota and his staff are doing a really good job. We're doing minor projects at the pool. We're painting a lot of the inside of the bathhouses in the supervisor office, and we're starting to winterize that. Our fall playbook went out on Tuesday. So if any of you don't have that, I can forward that to you. Let me know. We are also starting a new bags league in the fall and winter. We're gonna host that up at Mackinac on, I think we're gonna try to do Sunday afternoons. And then Billy O playground equipment has finally arrived, and we are waiting for them to get us on the schedule. As soon as we are scheduled, I will update you guys and let you know. But it's finally here, and so we will be able to get that swing on the swing set and get the rubber fixed. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the first thing I'll touch on actually just is in relationship to this graph in front of you that Robin just went over. Part of your strategic planning, which that's going to be coming forward. I don't know, Mayor, if you're going to announce any of that. But the strategic planning that we did, there'll be a final report coming forward for consideration of adoption. One of the items in that report that I specifically brought up, and it did gain a little bit of traction, was concern that the amount of parkland dedication we were requiring might be getting to be a little on the high side. So as early preparation, starting to do the research, Robin put all this information together. And what it showed me, shockingly, is that I was wrong. And what I thought we were doing was getting a little too aggressive.
What'd you say?
It's on tape.
This to me was really, it was actually a neat experience. It was good for me to see that in fact, we not only had the information, but we had the expertise to go through and create this and show something that we can now update on a regular basis as we acquire more parkland that either we purchase or is dedicated to us. And this is kind of a grade that shows us where we're at. And just like our budget, anytime we keep those revenues above our expenditures, we're in good shape. Anytime we keep that blue line above the red line, we're in good shape. So yes, that's me admitting fault. I saw things differently than they really were. So the other thing that I have is that I've now met with all of our departments. Thank you to all the department heads for getting me in front of the staff. Good experience, got to hear a lot of good information. There were two consistencies that I heard in almost every single department. We're growing and we're struggling with having enough staff and the equipment to carry out the duties of all of our different departments. It doesn't matter if it's police, fire, parks, it's really some of the same issue. They're dealing with so much growth, new requirements in the community, and it's just hard to keep up. On that note, we're getting close to starting budget season. And one of the first things that you'll hear from us is starting to review our CIP, our capital improvement plan.
Okay. That sounds good. Jackson. Gene.
I do not have anything.
Gene.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. As you know, Officer Sauer and Officer Allen are in the police academy. They're in their third week. I'm happy to report that they're past their first test. We're waiting on their second test results. But what I'm really happy to report is that Officer Allen was elected class president and Officer Sowers was elected class sergeant. So Norwalk is really representing well at ILEA in the class 306. Two code update changes that I'm going to be bringing to you shortly, I believe, is a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit request to drop the speed limit from 55 to 35 on East 27th, south of North Avenue down to Coolidge. We're building some apartments and got a new neighborhood right there. And the speed limit increases as you travel south at North Avenue to 55 from 35. So I think it's probably best consistently wise just to lower it. And then on Wednesday, Robin announced a new initiative that the parks were going to take on, and it's a really cool archery program. And while I'm super excited that we'll be able to teach kids archery, I realized very quickly that we have a code that says you can't shoot a bow in the city of Norwalk unless the chief of police gives you a written permit. So we should probably change that to allow people to shoot bows if they're being supervised by a Parks and Rec program or a school program or a Boy Scout program. Expect that to come pretty soon so they can do their archery program.
I was looking forward to seeing a bunch of permits.
I'm sure Ally wouldn't mind to crank them out and I can sit there and sign them. It might be easier just to change the code. And then lastly, as you're aware, today we had a death investigation. It's been 25 years almost. October 1997 is the last time we had an investigation of a similar nature. I can say that all of the Norwalk officers that arrived on scene immediately afterwards, Officer Haller, Officer Williams, Sergeant Downing, and Officer Jackson did a fabulous job containing the scene and catching a potential suspect. We did call out several officers to help. Almost the whole department had some involvement, whether it was at the scene, relieving people, or coming in to handle calls. So we had multiple people at the scene all day. The scene was not cleared until 6 p.m. About tonight, we were there from 12:30 in the morning to about 6 p.m. There's a lot of evidence collected by the DCI. More information will come out on that specifically, hopefully tomorrow. But one thing that I wanted to point out too, especially since Officer Kessler is sitting here in the audience, is that Officer Kessler, has taken on a grand responsibility to serve as our peer support person. And she has organized peer support offerings to the officers that went to the scene by herself and coordinated with West Des Moines and their peer support team and various professional services should any of the officers if they're requested. And so it's good to know on my end that we have the ability as a department and as a community to take care of the officers who respond. So that's all I got.
When you're reviewing speed limits,
Yeah.
I see West Des Moines dropped their half of the Arilla Road to 35. And I think it's 45 on the other side. That's Norwalk's. You may look
It
into
is
that.
45 in Norwalk, yes.
So it's 35 on one side and 45 on the other. That you may want to just bring that change to us.
So as the officer that patrols that section, in between Veterans and the cemetery in Arilla is 35 on both sides.
Okay.
It is 45
The
from,
rest of the way.
yeah, from the cemetery south to North Ave, G14, it is 45.
Oh, never mind. I thought it was 45 on our side.
I have seen their 35-mile-an-hour radar machine out there. Yeah. So, okay, very good. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks.
I have nothing.
All right, Wayne.
Nothing.
No boy, lots. No. Just a few things. 18 permits in August, similar numbers so far for September. So we're getting off pace from where we were in 2021. I think, which is kind of expected via some of the economy things going on and in interest rates and everything. But it's still on pace for similar numbers to what we did in 2020. So it's not like we're still going to end up with probably 250 some total permits. So that's good. We're chugging along. We hired our code enforcement position. We hired Travis Brockett from Public Works. So apologies to Wayne for poaching one of his folks, but we were really impressed with him. Really, we had 17 applicants, 4 really good interviews. So I feel like we had a really good candidate pool and going to have a good staff member out of it. He's got some experience with stormwater from his time at Public Works, so we're going to pull some of that back from the consultant work that we have. So we're excited to get some emphasis on that in the department again. Nuisance has been pretty typical with grasses and trees and vehicles. There's a vision clearance issue that we're getting dealt with out in Lakewood, a tree on a corner. And then we sent out some letters on dead, dying trees in Lakewoods, and we've seen some positive actions from residents on that and some phone calls from folks that had already dealt with stuff by the time we got their letter out to them. And again, just with those nuisance trees and the ash trees things, big things like with Lakewood, we sent out a notice telling people what their responsibility was. If there's a tree that somebody thinks is a specific issue, still have them call us or let us know, and we'll deal with that one like a specific abatement process we would normally do. Comp plan wise, met with all the department heads over the last 2 weeks to talk about our action steps. So I appreciate all of their time in doing that. That's helped us wrap that process up. About 170 different action steps that we've looked at and kind of finalized stuff. So that really lets us go on to, I'll meet with our consultants next week and start finalizing that draft and looking at meetings in October and November to schedule public hearings for approval. So we'll get that back to you before you guys here shortly. Attended Lions Club last night. We gave a presentation on the comp plan. That was good. Thanks for inviting me out, David. Any other groups that we have in town, if you're part of something you want me to come talk about the comp plan at, let me know. Happy to do that. Got presentation kind of in the can that I can just show up and talk as much or as little as you want me to. And then just another thing, prior to the Lions Club, I had an hour or so to kill around town. So I just drove around some of our projects. And if you've not been through the Hughes residential neighborhood, I can encourage you to go drive around, get out of your car and walk around. That was one of the first areas that we did different PUD language on. It was after we went to the Peninsula District. It's not anywhere close to the Peninsula District, but if you're walking around there, kind of keep some of those things that we saw in that area in mind, because I think we're getting like 75% of the way there with that. It's certainly a stark contrast to the normal suburban development you might see if you go maybe drive through Timberview or Blooming Heights first and then go check that out and kind of get some comparisons. So, yeah.
Thank you. How are things down under, Carrie?
They're good. I head back tomorrow, so the trip's about over, but I do not have anything to add tonight.
All right. Thank you. Ed.
I'll pass.
Dave.
I'm gonna take a minute, sorry. We had North Middle River Water Management, whatever, WMA, Watershed Management Authority meeting today. And so the group, the original group, we passed this 2080 in 2017. And 12 of the cities and counties and groups signed on to it then. And now we're trying to add at least 3 or 4 or 5 more others onto it. It's like Indianola and Winterset as a city did not jump onto it because they weren't sure really what, the comments from them was they weren't sure what was going on with it and what they would have to do with it and what their financial commitment was. Same thing we talked about, I think, when we passed it. There's really no financial commitment at this point in time for this, but we're trying to get the group going so that we can actually attack and get some federal dollars and state dollars and DNR dollars that go into that watershed, and it covers things all the way from Adair County, and it rolls all the way through Madison County and then up into northern Warren County. So Carlisle was there, and Brent Highfield, the mayor of Cumming, was there, and the 3 of us talked briefly. But I think that there's a huge benefit to us in for this. So. And I had texted Jim because if these new 2080 sign on, do we have to renew the 2080? And so we're going to review that 2080 to see if that may be coming back to you, just as a heads up. But we're going to try to get these other cities on so that we can get a little more pull and you have people there, but the DNR is holding a grant process in place. They're holding on releasing this grant process to cover the funding for the initial, what do you need to do in this area, grant until we're set up and running. They had a DNR rep there and he said there's two eligible groups. He said we've got the money for both and we're just holding the grant process till you guys are both ready to go. So there'd be $0 outlay on this to get the initial stuff going. So, positives there. I want to thank Public Works. You guys were out late last night with the water main. I saw them out again today, but they did a great job out there again. So they come out any hours, any time of day, and they seem to work until it's done. So it's really nice to see that. And I want to thank Luke for coming out last night. It was an hour and 15 minutes with questions and good discussion, I think. And they want to talk to Wayne. I think. I don't know if that's a good thing. But
I'm not very talkative.
no, they had a lot of good questions as a club. So, and then I've got Holly in 2 weeks coming in, correct?
Mhm.
And we're going to the fire station in October. And then I think I'm gonna try to get a couple other places. So we'll see.
Cool. Thank you.
Just one little thing, on the MPO site now, we can track where Norwalk stands versus other communities on our CO2 emissions. And how much comes from residential versus commercial versus what it's required now by the.
How do they measure?
I have no idea. But I think it's interesting that Norwalk has 0 emissions from industrial.
There you go. I guess we're a clean community.
I guess.
Or do they
I don't
consider
know.
it light manufacturing? Or do they consider it light manufacturing?
I don't know why they have commercial, industrial, residential, and transportation, so cars. And under, we have 35% commercial, but no for industrial, which have surprised me.
Interesting.
So if you want to see how we stack up.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Nothing.
I don't have anything tonight either. So we'll move on to item 10, or no, 9. We're going to go into a closed session pursuant to Iowa Code Section 2151J to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price of the governmental body. The governmental body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the governmental body would receive for that property. So Jim, is this a valid reason to go into closed session?
Yes, it is.
All right, can I get a motion to move into closed session? So we got tied on both between Livingston and Reba. Lindsay, would you call roll?
Councilmember Livingston.
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
Reba. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we are out of closed session or out of open session at 8:21 PM.